Man, what is it about first-party launch events that make them so incredible? I mean, the reason I bought Halo 5 is because they had just the most amazing launch event at my local Microsoft store. I mean, they had like a bunch of consoles set up to enjoy the game, and they had things like sandwiches and pretzels, things that weren't gross, so that would be easy to hand off a controller. But we're not here to talk about Microsoft today. We're here to talk about Yokai Watch. Now, by now the game has been out for a week, and I actually managed to go to the launch event last Saturday. I mean, I had worked that day, so I only managed to get into the last hour, but I was there long enough to preview a bunch of the good stuff they had there. I managed to take a look at some of the new Hasbro products, which I'll talk about later, and I even managed to get my Medallion Volume 2 signed by Mr. Hino, the person in charge of Level 5. They let 75 people get to actually meet him, although I was there too late to get one of the little wristbands, but an event coordinator actually approached me while I was flashing this thing around and said they'd get him to sign it for me, and when they actually said it in front of him, his face just lit up. I'd been watching him during his entire autograph session, and the poor guy was just exhausted. He spent most of the time signing things that weren't even Yokai Watch related. It was all other Level 5 things or stuff he'd worked on, like Dark Cloud or Professor Layton or even Inazuma 11, even though that never really got a release stateside. It didn't really make any sense. Anyway, it was really nice what the event coordinators did. Really, the Microsoft stores, when they do game releases, are amazing. The Nintendo World Store is amazing. I just love them so much. So today I'm going to be talking about the game. The Yokai Watch has been out for about a week now. I haven't found any release day numbers on that, but I imagine it'll be better than my earlier prediction. I was just really that mad at the dub when I made that initial prediction. Like I said, it's going to be popular with people who like the monster genre games, something of which I am most certainly a member of, that very demographic. So I wouldn't be surprised if it actually at least hits the 50,000 mark like what it saw in Japan. The dub, on the other hand, is figuring out ways to outdo itself with terribleness every week. I mean, the episode 7 cop was bad.
No more funny business, okay, weirdo?
But episode 9 had this.
You ain't whistling Dixie.
Okay, Densei USA, we need to have a talk. Could you please stop trying to make me hate Koma-san? I mean, this little guy is popular enough in Japan that he gets used in car commercials.
兄ちゃん何してるずら？おう、小マジロ、いるずら。こうすればゴルフバッグが縦に詰めるずらよ。兄ちゃん。
And now you're making me associate him with Whistling Dixie? I don't want to associate Koma-san with Whistling Dixie! Knock it off! Although in other news, they have replaced the theme song, the English Garapo, with the Old English trailer music, which is this kind of twangy Ben 10 sounding intro theme that, I mean, the ending part has grown on me a little bit. They actually brought it back in the video game, and I kind of dug it when I heard it on there, and at the very least, it's not pissing all over a better song, so you have to give it points there, but still, the dub isn't looking too good, even though they recently changed it so that it's also distributed on YouTube along with Disney XD. Well, yeah, the dub is terrible, but how's the game? It's good. It's actually pretty good. I kind of like it a lot, but probably the best word to describe the game is comfy, because you're basically following this kid through his summer vacation with monsters. So it's a fairly subdued setting. You're just in this kind of small city, wandering around the neighborhood, meeting monsters, doing all sorts of things. Just this really, really chill soundtrack. It's a very relaxed kind of game. You catch bugs, you go fishing. It's not like the high epic adventures you see in like Pokemon where you run around the world gathering the energy of the universe. I need to stop using that meme. But yeah, one of the big sources of contention is how the battle system works, in that it is fully automatic and the monsters work on their own. I mean, of course that's not true. If you didn't have any involvement in battle, that would just be terrible game design. But part of it is, it's kind of like the Dragon Quest Monsters game, where each yokai has a personality that determines how their AI works in battle. Like, you could have one that's all brave and does nothing but attack. You could have one that's focused on healing, and there's actually books that you can give your yokai to read that alters their attitude. So a little bit more of the game is preparation rather than, you know, improvising on the fly. Although you can do that too. You have 6 yokai on a wheel. 3 are out front participating in battle while the other 3 are benched. And you can rotate this dial as much as you want. during battle. You actually get a turn before the battle even starts to rotate the wheel to what position you want to start as, and even use an item. I mean, imagine if you could do that in Pokemon. But what you can do is you can have your characters up front also perform a Sultanate Attack by taking one that has a full gauge, hitting it and doing a little mini game, and if they start to get into trouble, you can actually rotate them out to the bench to take care of them. And things like status effects and debuffs, you actually perform a mini game just like a Sultanate in order to cure them, and that actually nets you some bonus experience points, so you actually have a really good incentive to rotate something out if it gets a status ailment to heal it. So yeah, the player isn't entirely uninvolved in the battle. I mean, it can get really frustrating when when your healer decides to loaf around for a turn while your tank goes down again. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. It's fun. I mean, when you get to a point where you just kind of want to do some chilling, relaxing grinding, you can just hit the X button and watch the battle go once your monsters are strong enough. So the game is very chill. Although one recommendation I'm going to make is that you should play as Katie, the girl character. It actually makes a really big difference in the game. If you've played the demo, you know you start in Nate's house and you eventually go to Katie's house in one of the missions. If you play as Katie, you live in Katie's house with Katie's parents. It's not like Pokemon where they just switch the models around but otherwise the roles are the same. No, it's an alternate universe where Katie found the watch instead of Nate, and as a result, it means I can pretend that that horrible dubbed TV show is just a bad dream, and it's how I was able to get comfy with the game. There's like tons of different dialogue, there's a bunch of things that happen because Katie's perspective as a girl is different from Nate's. So it's a very fun game to play as Katie. Her dub voice is also a whole lot less annoying than Nate's. No hate on you, Johnny. Honestly, I think you were miscast. It would be like putting Jack Nicholson in a John Wayne role. So, like I said, most of the problems with the dub I associate with bad direction. I don't blame the voice actors at all. Scott McNeil is one of the baddest mothers I've ever met. So, I can't hate voice actors. They do a lot of work. So yeah, the game is really comfy when it's not trying to instill the fear of God into you. There's this thing called Terror Time where if you misbehave, like by staying out too late at night or you refuse to advance the plot, you will get sucked into this place called Terror Time, where this big red Oni and his minions start to hunt you down in this kind of Metal Gear Solid style minigame. It's kind of like you go from this happy romping around to, Colonel, I think I might be in hell. And then there's Snartle. He's this guy who appears if you jaywalk across the street without changing the walk signal first, too many times. And he just kind of shows up and beats the living daylights out of you. Honestly, I think Snartle's the scarier one out of this because in Terror Time, despite its name, I'm spending too much time cracking Metal Gear Solid and Scooby-Doo jokes to even, be afraid of anything. And even if the Red Oni does start to chase you down, your character can chug a Red Bull, which gives them enough energy to run for hours and easily outrun the guy. Whereas, on the other hand, if I jaywalked across the street only to be met with this guy in a tribal mask swinging machetes over his head, shouting my name in between inarticulate howls of rage, I would probably faint. So now, what I'm sure a lot of you have also been waiting for, it is finally time to introduce the Yokai Watch U, this lovely little blue beauty that is the new Yokai Watch for the new season. It's actually got a whole lot of fun features to it. Like, you can't actually play it right away. It actually requires a AAA battery to work, which you have to install yourself. It's a much more powerful battery than comes with the other watches. A fun feature, though, is that you can actually detach the watch face from it. I imagine this is so it can be put on a variety of other bases, but that's actually how you change the battery here. It doesn't use the button cells. It uses this big fat battery, which has a bunch of benefits to it. And, honestly, it's meant to be associated with the third game, but the game in Japan's actually been delayed a whole bunch, so much so that Yokai Watch's popularity is actually kind of starting to fade in Japan. But the Yokai Watch U it's basically, the Windows XP of watches. It's not like the iPhone joke that was the Type 0, where it's incompatible with the other watches. The Yokai Watch U not only works with every metal they have ever created, but it has a slot on the side for an SD card, so you can actually update this darn thing. So the watch itself is actually pretty good. It comes with the Usapyon medals and the Pintocorn medals, which are supposed to be, these super American things. They actually have like little stars and stripes, like logos on their design, and they're designed to look like a Western-style comic book. I honestly think it's kind of hilarious when they think America and the first thing they think of is corn. Well, the first thing they thought of was astronauts. The second thing they thought of was corn.
Gentlemen, behold! Corn!
But anyway, it works just like every other Yokai Watch, although the introduction they give, rather than being kind of like a little energetic speech or a train announcement, it's more like they're being introduced on a game show or an award ceremony. So yeah, it works a lot like the other Yokai Watches, although the fact that it has a more powerful battery to it means that the speaker is also a lot better and stronger. So it's a lot easier to understand these characters. Like, Koma-san on the Type 0 is almost impossible to hear, but yeah, the Type 0 medals work just fine. Although I'm sure you noticed that the jingles that they've done have already been have also been changed. You know, it's not the Parichi Orechi Tomodachi thing. It's actually an entirely different song. Which is also a bit longer. It's not as snappy as the old watch, which is a little bit of a pain. But it's nice to see that they've actually changed a few things here. Although I really love what they have this thing do when you put a legend medal into it. Not that, but this. There we go. So yeah, unlike the other medals that get a fairly cute fanfare, these guys get a fanfare that's like, oh, these are the main events, this big guest star that we're having on today. So that's actually pretty appropriate for Legend medals. I love how they always do something special for the Legend medals, no matter what edition of the watch it is. So yeah, you can also upgrade it. That means you can also give it the Busters medal, which are for the Yokai Watch Busters game, which are a bit more like Spectrobes or the Pokepart games, where it's a bit more live action, running around, rather than the wheel-based strategy you get with the regular Yokai Watch. But that's also what this is for, is it updates you to be able to accept the Buster medals. There's also, like, a McDonald's medal, too, but yeah, they've been doing some fun stuff with the series. The game is good. The Yokai Watch U, it's fairly complex. I don't know if there's, like, additional features for the detaching face, like you could put it on a brooch, like the Fumi watch they also put out recently, which is this kind of big locket thing, or anything else like that. But yeah, it works. It does indeed work with every medal. Like, I showed you the new medals, I showed you the Type 0 medals, and like I said in my previous Legend medal review, the Hanasaki is an original watch medal. So you are able to use everything, and everything can be updated. So final word. Oh yes, the Hasbro watch. One of the things they showed off at the event was the new Hasbro watch. So I got to see exactly what is different about it. So the biggest thing is that they've removed the flashlight. I mean, I guess that's the most economical way to drop the price on it, but on the other hand, that is half the roleplay gimmick, but on the other hand, that isn't really the Yokai Watch's main selling point. So when it comes to dropping the flashlight, if that was what they had to do to drop the price, I guess that's the most sensible decision. Otherwise, everything looks to be about the same size. The medals are the same size and everything like that, but unlike the Japanese medals, which have the track centered on it, the bump track centered on it, the ones that they're going to put out in America are all left justified, specifically to keep these medals from being compatible with each other. That's a bit of an odd decision if you ask me, although I wouldn't be surprised if it's so people in Japan can't just buy the cheaper American medals, and they're gonna be cheaper. It's gonna be $3 for a pack of 3, which is cheaper than they have them in Japan, to try to import them more cheaply, which is part of that Bandai problem I was talking about before, because not everybody in Japan wants to pay $70 for a DVD. They'll buy the $20 American versions. It's why we have things like region locks and stuff like that. So, we're going to see. I actually managed to talk to a Hasbro rep at the event, so we'll see if I'll be able to get some cool stuff to show off. The watch is actually open for pre-order, which is kind of a depressing sight. They really expected a lot from this Yokai Watch. I imagine the sales numbers will be more like Fossil Fighters. They even have like a pre-order bonus for it. It's depressing for this little $20 watch. I mean, Cabbage Patch didn't have pre-orders. Furby didn't have pre-orders, I think. Or at least the originals didn't. Zoomer didn't have pre-orders. It really just kind of shows a lot of the arrogance with this series that they're having to backpedal on now. But I'll be able to take a look at this. They're going to have that frustration reduction feature where you can buy the toy with the associated medal, which is going to be great. They look like they're going to be fairly inexpensive. It looks like a lot of fun. The American toy release looks like it's going to be actually pretty good and pretty competitive with the sorts of things they got in Japan. So until I get to have my look at those, the game is actually pretty good, and this is Kohdok signing off. Or so you thought. You saw there was more time left on the video, didn't you? Well, I'm going to use that time to teach you a couple of secrets about the Yokai Watch game. First, I'm going to teach you how to find Noko. Noko is a tricky little critter that tends to spend its time randomly appearing, or not, in the little garden next to the Fusion Temple. Now, the way you can see if it's Noko is you can actually pop in and go in just far enough that on your radar screen you can see the rest of the garden. If there's a little icon milling about, kind of squished in the top, then it's Noko. If it's kind of in the middle, it's not Noko. Then you can just drop down the steps, charge straight at it, and then move downwards, and it'll zag right into you. And Yokai Watch does have a Peninsula of Power. This refers to like an area of land that kind of overlaps an area you're not supposed to meet until later in the game, and thus is covered in super powerful monsters. There's actually a spot where you can enter the abandoned hospital on the west side, climbing up some vines to get into the 3rd floor. There's a bunch of powerful rank A yokai here, including popular ones like Casanova, that you can fight up there, although they are pretty powerful. By the time I got there, my team was really overpowered, and even then they had a little bit of trouble fighting these characters, so enter at your own risk.
なんずらこの車なんずらヘイクズラどでかく使おうヘイクズラ広いずらねここに住みたいずらいざん